Welcome, everyone. We're very excited for today's webinar since it's our first webinar for 2025, actually. So it marks the new season of our webinars. And yeah, thank you all for joining. Welcome to today's webinar, Stay Ahead of FDA Regulations, Take Control of Food Supply Chain Risks with Actionable Insights. We're very thrilled to have you join us. This session is specifically designed for food and beverage manufacturers who are seeking effective ways to streamline risk monitoring and assessment processes. If you face challenges with outdated manual processes, fragmented data sources, or an overwhelming volume of irrelevant information, this webinar will provide actionable strategies to help you navigate all these obstacles. So the global food supply chain is more complex than ever, as you already know, and external risks, including supplier issues, recalls, contamination, and fraud, continue to grow. Many of you struggle to track and prioritize these risks, leaving you vulnerable to costly incidents and compliance challenges. So today, we'll explore together how to adopt a more proactive and streamlined approach to risk monitoring by leveraging AI-powered tools and customizable dashboards. By focusing on the most critical risks, food manufacturers can act swiftly to mitigate threats, safeguard operations, and of course, ensure regulatory compliance. So again, thank you for being here, all of you, and let's dive in. So let's see the focus of our webinar today. So we'll begin with the key challenges food manufacturers face in achieving a comprehensive view of external risks across their supply chains. Then we'll move on to some real-world use cases. We'll see some practical examples of how customizable dashboards can prioritize relevant risks and improve the decision-making process. Then we'll continue with the transition to proactive risk management and how you can actually shift from reactive approaches to predictive AI-driven strategies. And then we'll wrap it up with a Q&A session, as always, and you'll have the chance to engage directly with our expert for today to receive tailored advice on optimizing your current risk monitoring and assessment practices. So I guess it's about time to introduce Yanis. Yanis, welcome to our webinar today. And if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, of course. And I'm very happy to be here in the first webinar of 2025. So I'm Yanis Stoitsis. I am the Chief Technology Officer in Agronow and also a business partner in Agronow. I have been working in the food industry applying the advanced technologies for big data and artificial intelligence in the food industry in the last 15 years. I would say that I have been lucky, me and my team have been very lucky because we are working with food safety leaders from all around the world, the best leaders. We are getting so much feedback and so much input about how we can improve our services to help them in the challenges that you mentioned, Georgia. So I'm very happy to be here today to show and explain some of the use cases on how food manufacturers can take control of food supply chain risks with using actionable insights. So this will be the core part that I will present, but I'm heading back to you so we can see also which are the real challenges that we have today in the food industry.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Yanis. So as you already mentioned before, I give you the floor and we dive into the use cases. I wanted us to take a minute and check on the challenges actually in the food safety management. We have gathered some very nice results from the registration survey here. So we want to take a look on some insights that the webinar participants, shared with us. Basically, the primary needs and challenges in monitoring and assessing risks in food safety. So we have the specific question: what is your greatest need when it comes to monitoring and assessing risk for your products? And here on the right, you see the results highlighted at the top and the least important needs when it comes to monitoring and assessing risk. So it's very interesting to take a look at those because they're also correlating with the use cases we're going to see later on. The first and top results that we're going to see with the 85% of the participants agreed on is to be early informed about all external risks and hazards that may affect their supply chain. This was the most important need for most of you. And then the second one with the 65% was to continuously monitor food safety compliance and risk performance for all suppliers, which is also something very interesting. Followed by the third top need with the 52% of the answers was to take into consideration emerging threats when performing supplier history and performance and ingredient risk assessment. So that was the third answer that people agreed on, basically. And I also wanted to highlight which are the challenges in prioritizing these needs. So the participants expressed concerns about unforeseen emerging risks, particularly those stemming from global supply chain disruptions and new sourcing regions. These unpredictable factors make it harder to maintain proactive risk management strategies, of course. And as well as a recurring challenge is the inability to gain a holistic view of external risks and hazards, including those introduced by suppliers. So this lack of visibility leads to reactive rather than preventive approaches, increasing exposure to disruptions. And lastly, many participants also voiced frustration with outdated methods, which hinder efficiency and introduce the human error, of course. So these manual processes fail to keep pace with today's rapidly evolving risk landscape. And I think these insights really emphasize the urgent need for real-time, reliable tools to anticipate and mitigate risks effectively. Yanis, what do you think on this one?
It's extremely interesting because I'm hearing these challenges in the everyday interaction that I have with the food safety experts. Indeed, I would say that there are two main categories of the challenges. The one is about being informed about new unknown external risks that may affect the supply chain of the food companies. And this has to do both with the ingredients and the materials, but also the suppliers that may be affected by these new emerging risks. And the second category of challenges that I hear and I see also to be highlighted to be one of the top here is the how we can use this information, how the experts can use this information to assess the risk in ingredients, materials, and suppliers. So it's very interesting that we will talk, the use cases that we have are directly mapped to the two first challenges that I see here. So I'm looking forward to describe the use cases so we can also show how we can address through the use of the technology these use cases for the early notification and for the continuous monitoring and the assessment, the dynamic assessment of suppliers and ingredients.
Great. Thank you so much, Yanis. I know you're very excited to share the use cases with everyone. But before we dive into the use cases, I think we can have a short poll. We have two polls prepared for you today. So I think I'll go ahead and launch the first one. So the question that we wanted to ask you to kind of have this interaction with you before diving into the use cases was what types of use cases are becoming more important to your organization due to recent trends or regulations? So this is a multiple choice question. I'm gonna launch it right now, and you can go ahead and vote more than one choice actually. We just wanted to get a better idea of the types of use cases that are becoming more important to you. So I'm gonna let the poll running for a couple of minutes till we get some answers in. So this question has, I think, 6 possible choices available. And I think the more people are leaning towards the regulatory changes monitoring and to identify potential vulnerabilities for their supply chain. I'm going to give it a couple more seconds, and I'm going to share the results as well. Okay. I think we got some answers. So let me also share it with you. Yeah. I think, Yanis, we can see that the third and the fourth choice got the most.
Yes, yes, it's really in the now that we have so dynamic the regulatory framework globally. I understand that monitoring these regulatory changes is, of course, a challenging thing, and also due to many disruptions, due to many difficulties that we have in the production of the materials. There are many vulnerabilities, many new fraud issues, new adulteration issues that I understand that is difficult to monitor and to have the full knowledge about them and be early notified about any new trend for this kind of vulnerabilities. Yeah, so it's very interesting.
Great, thank you. Thank you everyone for voting. And I think it's time for you, Yanis, to take the floor. So we can move forward to our 4 use cases for today.
Yeah, so we are hearing a lot from the people, from the experts, from the food industry, from the food safety and quality experts that we are talking to, that they are interested in knowing how other food companies are using the technology about emerging risks, the technology, the artificial intelligence about forecasting trends in the supply chain, how they are using this to enhance the risk prevention approach that they have. So we thought that it is a very good idea to share these use cases. And today I will share 4 use cases. The first one that focuses very much on identifying all the potential food safety hazards in a supply chain of a company. The second is about monitoring the suppliers, the continuous monitoring of the suppliers, and having actionable alerts, not only alerts that give us information, but something that can actually can activate the preventive measures. The third use case is about establishing a supplier risk-based verification. And the last use case that I will describe is focusing on identifying fraud and adulteration issues in the supply chain. So let's start with the first use case. This is a use case that focuses very much on leveraging real-time and global data about potential hazards in order to establish a comprehensive view of the risk across all manufacturing sites and on updating the hazard plans. So here we have, in this use case, we are working with a company, with a food manufacturer that is using over 200 materials and ingredients in his supply chain. It gets these materials and ingredients from a bit more than 190 suppliers. Our client has 7 plants in USA, and there is a food safety and quality team of 20 experts that is dealing with the risk assessment of ingredients, with the assessment of the suppliers and the regulatory affairs, the monitoring of the regulatory changes. The main pain point that we were discussing when we met first and we started working with our client was that they were very much worried because they lack a comprehensive and reliable view of all potential hazards that may affect their supply chain. So the specific need that they have is that they need a hazard analysis tool to develop reports for all the potential food safety hazards associated with their ingredients, and especially with the new ingredients that they are trying to introduce in the supply chain. They want to be able to share these reports with the management, but also with all the plants, with the plant managers and with the FSQA team at the plants. And this was the main solution that they were looking for. So how Food-Akai, our system, helped them to address this challenge and the pain point is, first of all, using all the global and real-time data. We provided to them a hazard analysis dashboard that allows to identify all the potential food safety hazards in all the ingredients and finished products. This is an interactive dashboard where they can identify the categories of the hazards, but also very specific hazards and the frequency of these hazards in thousands of materials, ingredients, and finished products. They can compare the profile of the risk for different regions, like I'm showing here, India, how we can compare the herbs and spices risk profile of India and Vietnam. And in this way, they can perform a very fast analysis using this dashboard in all the potential hazards. For specifically, if we go to the next slide, we are also providing to them the ability to identify new and increasing risks for introducing ingredients in the finished products that they are producing. So it's very important because every time that they have a new ingredient, they need to know about new risks in these specific ingredients that they are introducing or in new finished products that they are developing. So this is something that is very critical to know. And then if we go to the next slide, Georgia, based on the information about all the potential hazards and the new and increasing risks that they have in the ingredients and the materials, they are creating a food safety hazards report every month that is shared with all the management team and all the plant managers and the FSQA teams at the production facilities. And this report, each report is focusing on the materials and the ingredients that this plant is using. So it's tailored and customized for the specific plant. It's not a generic risk trends report. It highlights to them which are the most important hazards that they need to take into consideration. And based on this information, they are also updating the hazard plan at the facilities. Another thing that they are including in these monthly reports, which is very important, is the forecast of the incident trends for specific hazards and regions that should be included in their food safety plan and hazard plan. So I'm showing here an example of the forecast that we are providing through Food Akai for a category like herbs and spices. This kind of forecasts that are showing if we will have more, if we will have an increasing trend in these specific foods or decreasing trend of incidents can be also very specific for hazards and for regions. So it provides an answer of which hazard for herbs and spices will increase for materials that are coming from a specific region. And they are also including this information in the reports that they are sharing with the management and the plant managers. So not only the corporate team, but also the management and the plant managers are aware of the risks that will increase, that are likely to increase within the next few months. Specifically for the management, it is important when they want to suggest a new preventive measure, and they need to justify this using data, using the frequency of these incidents, using the trend of these incidents, of these hazards in the ingredients. And based on that, they are taking the decisions if they should invest or not. And in some cases, they are also taking very important decisions, like if they should finally introduce this new ingredient that has these specific hazards and these risk trends. There are cases in which they are rejecting of introducing, and they are not using this new ingredient in their supply chain. So this is how also the forecast can be used in this use case. If we go to the next slide, this is not something that is only a good practice in the industry, but it's also something that is required by the new regulations. So using this kind of deep hazard analysis for all the potential food safety hazards, Food Akai helped the company to also comply with the FDA final rule for the preventive controls for human food. Based on this rule, the company must identify and consider known or reasonable foreseeable biological, chemical, and physical hazards, and this should be dynamic. This cannot be static because there are new hazards that are introduced in the supply chain. And based on this hazards analysis, they need also to define, the rule requires to define a preventive control and to implement a written preventive controls plan for these identified hazards. So the value that our customers, as customer is getting, is that doing this in the previous situation, they were doing this kind of assessment of all the new risks, of all the potential hazards manually. So compared, we managed to help them to automate this, so they saved efforts by 50% from the manual checking and identifying hazard. They were also able to prevent incidents because they know which are the potential hazards, and they prevented the contaminated incoming materials to be introduced into the plants. So this is something very important. As I mentioned, they are also, it was super easy for them to comply with the FSMA rule for preventive controls for human foods. And by activating early the preventive measures for the affected products, they are able to switch from reactive to proactive, and to avoid incidents that are always costly and have a negative impact on the brand. And as we are showing in the diagram, already from 2024 that we are working with, they managed to have some important savings and there is a projection of increasing the savings because they are constantly improving the way that they are adopting these kind of services. So this was the first use case. The second use case, as I mentioned, is focused more on the suppliers and how we can have actionable alerts for suppliers. So this use case is about leveraging the real-time alerts that we can produce by collecting information from all around the world to quickly identify and address issues that may impact the supply chain, reducing the manual monitoring efforts and ensuring at the same time that we will have a timely communication with suppliers about the preventive measures that need to be activated. So in this case, we have a client. Our client is a food company based in the United States. It has 61 plants in United States, Latin America, Europe, and Asia. They are managing over and using more than 500 materials and ingredients. They have over 1,000 suppliers that they need to monitor. So it's a very large number. And they have a large team of 60 experts located in different areas like United States, Latin America, Europe, and Asia. The main pain point is that they were afraid that they will miss an important risk that can affect their suppliers and materials. As you can see from the profile, our client has a broad range of products, materials, and suppliers, and the FSQA experts cannot do this work for such a number of materials and suppliers manually searching the web. So the specific need that they were looking for is a system that will tell them that from all these suppliers that they have, they should focus on those for which we have some issues and we have risks that can affect them, and in this way to actively and timely activate the preventive measures. So this is the profile of the customer, of our client. So how we manage to help them? We help them, first of all, to set up all the supply chain preferences, the ingredients, the materials, then suppliers, the regions from which the materials are imported. We set up this information in the FoodAkai so we can tailor-made all this alerting mechanism to focus only in this, because as we saw also in the challenges, one of the challenges that the experts are facing is that they are overwhelmed with information. So they cannot deal with so much information and they need to have only relevant information for their supply chain. So this is the first step that make the information relevant for them, this alerting relevant for them. And then we have two layers of alerting that ensures that they will not miss something that is very important for their supply chain. The first layer is the alerts that they are getting daily or even instantly, if they prefer to, about incidents that we collect for specific ingredients, materials. And in these alerts, we are not only providing the information about what happened, but we are also highlighting, as you can see, which materials and ingredients may be affected by increasing risks or even new risks, very new things. And also which finished products will be affected based on the information that we have in the customization that I mentioned. So here, for instance, we can see that based on the latest data that we are collecting, there is a very important increase of mineral oils in spice mix products. So this is something, an alert that directly they are using to activate preventive measures to further investigate this with their supplier to check if there are data that can justify that there is no issue with this risk for the specific supplier and the material that they are getting from the supplier. So this is the first layer of the information, and the most useful alerts for the suppliers is the real-time alerts that they are getting for all their suppliers every time that there is a recall, a border rejection, import refusal, inspection, warning letter, every time that there is a new such compliance information available for this company, they will get this information. So in this example, our client received a supplier alert about salmonella in basil by a supplier that was from Italy, and they directly contacted the supplier, and they also conducted an audit to make sure that they will not have any issues in their supply chain. The information about all the information that we have about inspections, incidents, warning letters, border rejections, as I mentioned, all this information is used also by our client to perform a food safety due diligence for their suppliers, so they can make sure that they know the food safety history of each supplier. We have cases that based on this investigation, based on this due diligence that they are doing with our data, they will even reject a supplier. They will not work as supplier. But in most cases, they are just contacting the supplier that they are a new supplier that they want to work with, and they make sure that the supplier has all the preventive measures to ensure that they will not have any issues in their supply chain. So with that, with this information, with all these services, we are helping them to be also to comply also with regulations like the FDA requirement for foreign suppliers verification. Based on this requirement, requirements, the company must evaluate the foreign supplier's compliance history. This includes evaluating if the supplier had any import refusals, import alerts, recalls, failed inspections, or any other FDA actions issued against them. We are providing this information. It's super easy to get this information through alerts, but also in the system. So it's also very easy to justify to FDA that they have a very good process in place to comply with these requirements for foreign suppliers verification. So with these services, we are always discussing with our clients which is the business value that they are getting, which is the return of investment that they are getting. And the client communicated to us that with these services that they managed to save the efforts from manual checking and verifying which of the suppliers may be affected or was affected. And they managed to reduce this effort by more than 50%. And the most important value is that they are able to activate early the preventive measures for their suppliers to prevent an incident that, as I mentioned, can be costly and has always negative impact on the brand. So already in 2024, they got a value that was very clear in terms of the savings from the efforts that they saved. So this value we expect to be increased within the next 2 years because they are constantly using the system, the information in a better way and integrating this information in their internal workflows. Let's go to the third use case. The third use case is again about the suppliers, is how we can establish risk-based verification for suppliers, leveraging real-time food safety incidents data. And here we have the example of a manufacturer that we are working with that has 11 production facilities in North America, but has a very broad range of materials, products, very broad portfolio of products. and over than 1,000 suppliers that they need to monitor and to assess. We are working here with a team in this food manufacturer with a team of 35 experts that are using our system. The main point is that they are frustrated because when we met them, they were still performing critical risk intelligence tasks, such as the supplier's verification, in a manual or outdated way, like, for instance, using spreadsheets, large spreadsheets. And their approach was not risk-based as required by the FDA. So what they were trying to do is that the FSQA team, and specifically the supplier assessment team, was performing supplier assessment once per year using this manual approach that I mentioned, and using mainly internal information about audit results, certification, and non-conformities that they knew. This was a very heavy task, and required a significant amount of time and effort. So how we help them? They are using FoodAkai to be able to assess automatically all the suppliers. How they are doing that? So the first step is that we added all the suppliers, as you can see in this screen, and all the source ingredients for each supplier, all the facilities of the suppliers, not only the supplier as a parent company, but also the specific facilities of each supplier that may be located in different regions. So we know which is the origin of this supplier, which is exactly the facility, which are the source ingredients from this specific facility and this supplier. And this is a customization that we are doing, so we are able then to estimate automatically the risk, to calculate the risk for each supplier, a risk score for each supplier. So based on this, as far as we have done this, the client is able, if we go to the next slide, Georgia, the client can get a dynamic supplier profile that aggregates all the relevant information of the supplier, including the company structure, which are the subsidiaries, which are the facilities that are located in different regions. And we can produce a supplier risk score using the information about the recalls, the border rejections, the inspections, so they can use this risk score to decide and to if they need to activate a preventive measure, like, for instance, an audit, or most frequently to contact the supplier and discuss this risk, so they make sure that the supplier has the preventive measures in place to mitigate these risks. For each of their supplier, they are identifying all the potential risks based on the materials and the ingredients that the supplier is using. And they are sharing also these reports, the information about and the trend about these hazards in the specific materials and ingredients. They are sharing this information with the supplier so they can make data-driven discussion, an informed discussion, and not just to mention that they heard something or they saw something about a new emerging risk. They are actually sharing the report, which is super easy to do that in FoodAkai, because you can create the report for a specific supplier, for the ingredients and materials used by the specific supplier, and you can download and share these reports with your supplier. So this is something that they are doing to make sure that also the supplier has the common view of the risk. And then they are utilizing our external data that we are providing for the risk. They are also integrating internal data and using all these different types of information. They are calculating a risk score and for each supplier, and they can rank the suppliers based on this score. So this ranking helped our client to, for the first time, to define a risk-based audits plan, and not just a plan that is repeating the same frequency or the same that is focusing on the same potential issues in a supplier. So this is how such an automated supplier risk assessment helped them in designing a preventive measure. And these services also helped our client to comply with the requirements for foreign suppliers verification. Based on this, on the foreign suppliers verification program and the rule, the final rule of FDA, the company must perform a risk-based foreign supplier verification. And this includes calculating for each supplier a risk score that is based on the recalls, inspections, outbreaks, and import refusals. So it's also, as I mentioned, in the case of monitoring the suppliers and knowing the food safety, the compliance history, in the same way here, it's super easy to show to the FDA that you are doing a risk-based foreign supplier verification by including all this information and calculating a score based on real data, based on real facts. And the value here, the business value here for our client is that they manage to ensure that all the risks that may affect their suppliers are taken into account when they are doing the assessment. As I mentioned, using doing this risk ranking for the different facilities, for the different suppliers, they are able to design an effective audits plan and spend money, the budget for the audits in a very clever way that is focusing only on the risks, on the risk regions. And of course, as in the other use cases, they saved a lot of efforts, and this means also cost from manual risk assessment of suppliers, and they are able now to do it not once per year, but every quarter. And this is very important because, as we mentioned in the challenges, the supply chain is not static. The hazards in the supply chain are not static, are very dynamic, and they are new emerging risks constantly. So it's not, it's better to do this kind of assessment and to update this assessment more frequently. And the last use case that we have that we would like to share with you today is, if we go to the last, is how we can use all the real-time and global data that we are collecting about fraud and adulteration issues to define a robust fraud vulnerability assessment. Again, a similar profile for our client here. We are working with a food manufacturer that is using over 200 materials and ingredients, over 190 suppliers. They have 7 plants and a team of 20 experts that are located in the United States. They are worried because they like a comprehensive and reliable view of all the fraud and adulteration risk in the supply chain. And due to the increase of the prices, due to the reduction of the production volumes, there are a lot of new fraud and adulteration risks. Just take the example of what is happening with cocoa, but also other cultivations and other materials that are very much affected by the increased prices. So they needed a solution that will provide the reports about all the potential fraud and adulteration issues. In a similar way, like the food safety reports, they are using the reports module that we have in the Food Akai, in which they can create a monthly food fraud report that is shared that can be shared with plant managers, with all the management team in order to take critical decisions. This kind of report, in a very similar way, like in the case of food safety issues, can be specific for plants. So different reports are shared with the different plants to make sure that all the plants and the FSQA teams know which are the latest and the new issues, fraud and adulteration issues in the materials that are used in the production facilities. So this is how they can use these reports. In these reports, they can also include the information about the forecasts of fraud and adulteration issues that we may have in the next few months. These are live data that I just pulled out from the Food Akai before this webinar. As you can see, the adulteration, the economical motivated adulteration issues that are expected in the next months are increased compared to the current average number of issues that we have. And product and foods like fish and fish products like cocoa and cocoa products and fruits and vegetables are likely to be affected by this increase of adulteration issues. So they are also including this information. This can also include information about very specific foods that will be affected. So in the reports, they are including this information as well. This helps them very much to comply with another rule that FSMA, that FDA and FSMA regulation has, which is the rule for intentional adulteration. Based on this rule, company must identify all the vulnerable parts of their food manufacturing processes and conduct a food fraud vulnerability assessment to identify all the economical motivated adulteration issues. As the company or client using the reports, but also the forecast for for adulteration and fraud issues, it was super easy for them to show to FDA that they are performing and they have identified all the potential vulnerabilities in their supply chain as it comes to the fraud and adulteration issues. So the value that our client is getting is, compared to the previous way of manually trying to identify this kind of issues, they saved a lot of efforts because now this is automated, and they are also feel sure that they will not miss any new issues. It's very important for them that they can identify unknown and new economical motivated adulteration issues, and they can activate early the preventive measures to prevent a food fraud incident. And with that, I'm closing the use cases that we would like to share with you. It will be extremely helpful if you can provide to us the feedback on which are the use cases with which that resonates to you. So if we can now go to a second poll, and we are really would like to know which of these use cases resonates with you and your current challenges, so we can see what we are missing, which are the things that we should work and improve more. As I mentioned, I described 4 use cases: the identification of all the potential food safety hazards, including the new emerging risks that may affect your supply chain, how we can have actionable alerts for my suppliers. So I'm sure that I will not miss anything that is very important and can be prevented. The third use case was about establishing a risk-based verification for all my suppliers. This is usual. Now it's done manually. It's very difficult, it's time-consuming to use all the potential information. This can be automated. And the fourth use case was about identifying fraud and adulteration issues.
I think we can share the results, Yannis. And thank you for this amazing session. I found all the use cases very interesting. Here we can have a look at the results of the poll. Surprisingly, the last use case was the most, the ones that the most people resonated more with. So very interesting feedback. Thank you all for participating in the poll. I think, Yannis, we also have a couple more minutes for our Q&A session, which we promised you. So right now you can go ahead and put a question that we can answer in the Q&A section. And I think we already have some question, Yannis. So the first question that we got was, how can I identify for my business the most relevant risks and threats and ensure my supply chain is robust enough?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because there is a lot of information out there that can, as I mentioned, can overwhelm you. That can be something that is not relevant for your supply chain. So the approach that we are following, which is not a straightforward, it needs a lot of work on our side, but it's the best way to answer the question that you are making, is that we need to specify and to add all the information about the supply chain of a food company. So we know all the parameters and the algorithms that they are using. They are suggesting and they are providing only relevant information. This is a good way of avoiding getting information and using information in the assessment that may not be useful, and focusing only on the relevant information, only on the relevant risks for the supply chain. So definitely this is something that we see that is working, and we are trying to find ways to improve this constantly. So this relevance is more robust. And when you have all this relevant information, then we believe that you can have a very robust risk prevention approach that is also data-driven, is dynamic, you have live risks for all your suppliers, materials, ingredients. Yeah, but it's a good point. It's something that it is a nice challenge, and yeah, the only way right now to address this is to know also the information, the parameters of the supply chain of each company.
Great, thank you, Yannis. I think we have time for one more question. So we got, how can I produce better reports on the latest risks? Or also another question, and I guess you can decide which one you want to answer to, which one we got time to answer to. If there is any integrated tool affordable for small businesses for identifying emerging risks.
I think that I can have short questions that will be helpful for both. So for the reports, as I showed, there is a way, based on the customization that we are doing for the different suppliers or the ingredients, materials that are of relevance for you. There is a reports module that is focusing, and it's one of the most popular modules that we have, that you can adding this filters, and you can focusing on specific clients and suppliers, you can create a food safety or fraud and adulteration hazards report, and it's super easy to do so. And coming to the second question, which is a very good one, yeah, because we know that there are always limitations, and especially when it comes to smaller companies, there are limitations with the budget. So that's why we believe that a good way to approach this challenge is to provide something that is affordable, that it addresses the most important, maybe simple, but very critical challenges, like for instance, the monitoring. So there are monitoring solutions out there for suppliers and ingredients and materials, including ours, that they are affordable. And of course, if you want to get more advanced tools for automating and predicting the risks, then it becomes something that it can be not so. It can be quite expensive for a small company. But what we are trying to do, and we see also other solutions and other companies like ours doing, is that we are trying to provide packages that match to the needs of the different segments of the supply chain of the companies that we have, the small, the medium ones, the large ones, the multinational ones, these packages includes what the companies at the different segments need. And we always check if this is affordable compared also to the value that it can get. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yanis. And I think this marks the end of our webinar. Thank you all so much. First of all, for those who stayed till the end of the webinar, thank you for answering to all our questions and participating. So definitely feel free to scan the QR code below or type the link if you want to revolutionize your food safety risk management with Food Akai, and speak with us and definitely find a package that fits your specific needs. So feel free to scan the QR code or type the link below, and we're looking forward to connecting with you. Thank you once again, everyone, and thank you, Yanis, for this amazing presentation.
Thank you, Georgia, for coordinating this very, very interesting webinar. So thank you all for participating in the webinar. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.